The encounter. The observation deck of Nexus Prime had always been Marcus Chen's refuge from the chaos of interstellar diplomacy. Tonight, however, even this sanctuary offered no peace. The massive transparent dome revealed a sight that had emptied the station of half its inhabitants within minutes. 7 Krell warships materializing from quantum space like sharks emerging from dark water. Marcus pressed his palm against the cool glass and watched the fleet arrange itself in perfect formation. Each vessel was a masterpiece of brutal efficiency, their hulls the color of polished silver, covered in geometric patterns that served as both armor and sensor arrays. At the center hung the largest ship he had ever seen, dwarfing even the massive cargo haulers that frequented the station. The Eternal Judgment. Every sentient being in known space had heard of it. Behind him, the last few stragglers rushed toward the evacuation shuttles. A Valorian merchant dropped an entire crate of crystalline artifacts in his haste, the precious cargo shattering across the deck. No one stopped to help him gather the pieces. When the Krell came calling, you ran. That was the universal constant, proven across dozens of conquered worlds and countless military engagements. Marcus should have been running too. His colleagues at the Interspecies Cultural Institute had warned him about his curiosity, how it would get him killed one day. His sister had said the same thing in her last message, though with more colorful language. They were probably right. Instead, he pulled up his data slate and began reviewing everything he knew about Krell military protocol. It was not much. The Krell Empire kept its internal workings carefully hidden from outsiders, revealing only what they wanted the galaxy to see: overwhelming force and absolute victory. The station's alert system fell silent. In the eerie quiet that followed, Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Then came the docking clamps engaging with a sound like thunder, followed by the hiss of airlocks synchronizing. They were boarding. Marcus made his way through the empty corridors toward the main arrival terminal. The station's ambient lighting had shifted to emergency mode, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. His footsteps echoed off the metal walls, each step a reminder of how alone he was. The terminal was not quite empty. Station Director Venshaw, a nervous Proximan whose blue skin had gone pale with fear, stood with 2 security officers near the main airlock. They looked like they wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. Dr. Chin, Venshaw's voice cracked. You should not be here. Please go to the secure shelters. I am exactly where I need to be, Marcus replied calmly. Someone should greet our visitors properly. Interspecies relations is literally my job. The Krell do not care about relations. They care about conquest. Then maybe it is time someone showed them something different. The airlock opened with a pressurized gasp. The first to emerge were soldiers, each one over 7 feet tall, their armor reflecting the terminal lights like liquid mercury. They moved with mechanical precision, establishing a perimeter with movements so synchronized they could have been a single organism. Their weapons remained holstered, but their presence alone was threat enough. Then she entered, and Marcus understood why entire systems surrendered at the mention of her name. Commander Zarevex was taller than her soldiers, standing nearly 8 feet in height. Her armor was different from theirs, more ornate but somehow more dangerous, engraved with symbols that Marcus recognized as battle honors. Each one represented a world brought into the Empire's fold. He stopped counting at 20. Her skin was the pale silver characteristic of Krell nobility, and her eyes were the color of molten steel. 2 elegant horns curved back from her temples, decorated with bands of black metal. But it was the way she moved that truly captured attention. Every step was controlled, calculated, the movement of a predator that had never known defeat. The terminal's few remaining occupants pressed themselves against the walls. Venshaw attempted a greeting, but his voice emerged as barely more than a whisper. Zarevex ignored him, her gaze sweeping the space with the efficiency of someone cataloging targets. Marcus stepped forward. Not aggressively, not with false bravado, just a steady walk that brought him to the center of the terminal. He stopped about 20 feet from where Zarevex stood, close enough to be noticed, far enough to not seem threatening. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, Commander," he said in clear, measured tones. "I hope your journey was smooth." The effect was immediate. Every Krell soldier turned toward him, hands moving to weapons. Venshaw made a sound like a strangled gasp. But Marcus kept his eyes on Zarevex, watching as her head tilted slightly, studying him the way a scientist might examine an unexpected variable in an experiment. "You are not running," she observed. Her voice was deeper than he expected, with harmonics that suggested the Krell vocal structure was more complex than human. "Everyone else ran. I noticed that. Seemed rude to leave you standing in an empty terminal. I am Dr. Marcus Chin, cultural anthropologist with the Interspecies Institute. I know who you are. She took 3 steps closer, and Marcus fought every instinct that screamed at him to back away. I read the station manifest before we docked. You have published 17 papers on cross-species communication. You speak 14 languages. You have spent your entire career studying how different species interact. Sounds about right, though you make it sound more impressive than it feels. Mostly it involves a lot of awkward misunderstandings and apologizing for cultural mistakes. Yet you studied us, the Krell. Your most recent paper analyzed our military communication protocols. Marcus nodded. The way your fleets coordinate across vast distances is fascinating. The integration of biological and technological systems, the hive mind aspects without actual telepathy. It is remarkable engineering. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps. Her soldiers looked confused, their carefully maintained formation wavering slightly as they tried to process this interaction. You speak of our military doctrine as if discussing art, Zaravek said. Because it is art. Just because something is designed for war does not mean it cannot be beautiful. Your fleet's arrival formation was perfect. The precision, the timing, the way each ship complemented the others. That takes mastery. She studied him for a long moment, those metallic eyes revealing nothing. Then, unexpectedly, she gestured to her soldiers. They relaxed fractionally, hands moving away from weapons. Walk with me, Dr. Chin. There is a question I would ask you. Venshaw tried to protest, but Zaravek silenced him with a glance. Marcus followed her toward the terminal's observation area, acutely aware of the soldiers maintaining a careful distance behind them. She moved to the large viewport that overlooked the docking bays and her assembled fleet. Do you know who I am? She asked, her tone neutral but something else lurking beneath the surface. Marcus considered the question carefully. You are Commander Zaravek, first blade of the Krell Empire. You have won 47 major engagements without a single defeat. You personally led the campaigns that brought the Tertian Cluster and the Helix Confederation into Imperial control. They call you the Silver Death. Children across a dozen worlds are told stories about you to make them behave. Military academies study your tactics. Half the galaxy fears you. She turned to face him fully. And yet you approached me. Spoke to me as if we were colleagues discussing academic matters. Why? Because fear is boring, Marcus said simply. Everyone fears you. That tells me nothing interesting about who you actually are. I wanted to know if the person matched the reputation. And what have you concluded? That you are tired. The words came out before he could stop them, but once started, he continued. You move like someone who has been at war so long that peace would feel wrong. You speak like someone reciting lines from a script. You look at me like I am the first genuinely surprising thing you have encountered in years. That is exhausting, being what everyone expects you to be. Her expression remained neutral, but her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. The soldiers behind them tensed. Marcus wondered if he had just made a fatal mistake. You are either remarkably perceptive or remarkably foolish, Zaravek said quietly. My sister votes for foolish, but she is biased. To his genuine surprise, the corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something adjacent to it. The Empire has sent me to establish a permanent military presence in this sector. Nexus Prime will become an Imperial outpost. This is not negotiable. However, the transition can be peaceful or it can be violent. That choice belongs to those who live here. I see. And what do you personally hope for? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What I hope is irrelevant. I am my Empire's instrument. I execute their will. That sounds like something you were taught to say. I asked what you hope for. She turned back to the viewport, silent for so long that Marcus thought she might not answer. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, almost reflective. I hope that one day someone will look at me and see something other than a weapon. That someone will speak to me as you have, without fear or hatred or tactical calculation. I hope that there is more to existence than conquest and duty. She paused. But hope is a luxury soldiers cannot afford. I disagree. Hope is the only thing that makes being a soldier bearable. You have never been a soldier, Dr. Chin? True. But I have studied enough military cultures to know that the best warriors are the ones who remember what they are fighting for, not just what they are fighting against. Zaravek turned to him again, and this time he saw something in her eyes that the reputation had not prepared him for: curiosity. You intrigue me, human. Your species is not part of the Empire, yet you show no fear. You are physically weak compared to my kind, yet you speak with confidence. You should be like the others, running and hiding. Instead, you offer conversation. Maybe that is humanity's real strength. We are small and fragile and we die easily, but we are very good at seeing past surfaces. At finding connection in unlikely places. Or perhaps you are simply naive about the realities of power. Perhaps. Or perhaps power is not as absolute as it appears. Marcus gestured to the fleet beyond the viewport. You command all of that. You could destroy the station with a word. But here you are, talking to an unarmed academic instead of issuing orders. That suggests something more complicated than simple conquest. She was silent for several heartbeats. Then she spoke words that would change everything. I am required to establish imperial authority here. That will take several cycles. During that time, I will need cultural advisors to help integrate the station's population into imperial administration. You will serve in this capacity. It was phrased as a command, but Marcus heard the question underneath. I accept, he said. Though I should warn you, I ask a lot of questions. Good. I am tired of people who only provide answers they think I want to hear. She signaled to one of her soldiers. Escort Dr. Chen to guest quarters on the Eternal Judgment. See that he has full access to cultural databases and communication systems. As Marcus was led away, he glanced back to see Zarevex still standing at the viewport, staring out at the stars. For just a moment, the legendary commander looked less like the Silver Death and more like someone searching for something they had lost long ago. He did not yet know what he had begun. Neither did she. But somewhere in that terminal, between fear and curiosity, between reputation and reality, something had shifted. The galaxy feared her. But Marcus Chen had looked past the fear and seen something else entirely. And that made all the difference. The understanding. The guest quarters aboard the Eternal Judgment were nothing like Marcus had expected. He had imagined a sterile cell, all sharp angles and cold metal, a space designed to remind him that he was merely tolerated, not welcomed. Instead, he found himself in a room that, while undeniably Krell in its efficiency, contained unexpected touches of consideration. The viewport was larger than necessary, offering a sweeping view of the stars. The bed, though designed for someone much taller, had been adjusted to accommodate human proportions. Most surprisingly, there was a small workstation with access to an extensive cultural database that went far beyond what any prisoner would receive. Marcus was examining a file on Krell's social hierarchies when his door chimed. The sound was musical, almost pleasant, another small surprise in a day full of them. Come in, he called, expecting perhaps a soldier with instructions or restrictions. Zarevex entered alone. She had removed her ceremonial armor, wearing instead a simple uniform of dark gray that somehow made her appear more formidable rather than less. Without the armor's bulk, he could see the elegant lines of her physiology, the way her species had evolved for both grace and lethality. I hope the accommodations are acceptable, she said, standing near the doorway as if unsure whether to enter fully. They exceed acceptable by a significant margin. I particularly appreciate the database access. Most conquerors do not typically provide their captives with extensive research materials. You are not a captive, Dr. Chin. You are a consultant. Is there a practical difference? Yes. Captives are confined. You have freedom of movement throughout the ship, with certain restricted areas for security purposes. Captives are monitored constantly. You are afforded privacy. Captives are given orders. You are invited to provide counsel. Marcus gestured to the room's only other chair, a sleek piece of furniture that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood ergonomics as a form of combat. Would the commander care to sit? I find conversations work better when people are comfortable. She hesitated, and in that moment, Marcus saw the weight of protocol warring with something else. Then, with a deliberateness that suggested she was making a conscious choice to defy her own training, she sat. I have never done this before, Zarevex said quietly. Sat in a chair? Visited someone's quarters for conversation without strategic purpose. In Krell society, especially among the military caste, all interactions serve a function. Social visits are considered inefficient. Emotional connections are weaknesses to be suppressed. Marcus leaned forward, genuinely curious. Then why are you here? Because when you asked me what I hoped for, I gave you an honest answer. I have not been honest about such things in longer than I can remember. It felt like breaking a seal on something I had locked away. I wanted to understand why. Maybe because I asked without wanting anything from you. No tactical advantage, no political gain, just genuine curiosity about you as a person rather than as a position or a weapon. Zarevex's metallic eyes studied him with an intensity that would have been uncomfortable if not for the genuine confusion behind it. Your species is strange, Dr. Chin. You are fragile, short-lived, and lack most of the natural advantages other species possess. Yet you have spread across dozens of worlds. You have survived conflicts with species far stronger than you. How? We adapt. We connect. We find common ground with the most unlikely allies. And we refuse to accept that things must remain as they have always been. He paused. Also, we are incredibly stubborn. That helps. Stubbornness. Is that what brought you to approach me when everyone else fled? Partly. Though I prefer to call it professional curiosity combined with a deeply ingrained inability to accept conventional wisdom without testing it first. For the first time since entering, Zaravex's expression softened into something that might have been amusement. You test conventional wisdom by walking toward the most dangerous military commander in the sector. When you put it that way, it does sound less like scientific inquiry and more like a death wish. But I operate on a simple principle. The things everyone knows to be true are often the things most worth questioning. And what truth about me were you questioning? That fear is the only appropriate response to you. That your reputation tells the complete story. That someone who has conquered so much has nothing left to learn. Marcus stood and moved to the viewport, looking out at the vast darkness punctuated by distant stars. I have spent my career studying how different species interact, and I have learned something important. The most dangerous conflicts start when we stop seeing each other as complex beings and start seeing each other only as threats or tools. You are feared, Commander, but fear is a poor foundation for understanding. Zaravex rose and joined him at the viewport. Standing beside her, Marcus was reminded of their physical disparity. She could kill him with casual ease, could break him without effort. Yet she stood there, carefully maintaining a respectful distance, her posture open rather than aggressive. I was designed before I was born, she said, her voice taking on a quality he had not heard before, something almost vulnerable. The Krell Empire practices genetic optimization for all military castes. My parents were selected based on genetic compatibility. My augmentations began in the growth chamber. By the time I took my first breath, my future had been determined. I would be a weapon. The best weapon the Empire had ever created. That must have been lonely. She turned to him, surprised. Lonely? Never being allowed to choose. Never being asked what you wanted. Always being what others needed you to be. That is a special kind of isolation, being surrounded by people but never truly seen. Zaravex was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I had a sister once. Younger by 3 cycles. She was gentle, interested in art and biology rather than warfare. The instructors said she was defective, that the genetic optimization had failed. They removed her from the military program when I was 12. I never saw her again. I am sorry. What? You did not make that decision. Because empathy does not require responsibility. Sometimes people just need to know that someone else understands their pain. Empathy. Zaravex tested the word as if it were foreign. We are taught that empathy is a weakness. That emotional connection compromises tactical efficiency. That a true warrior must be isolated from such feelings. And yet here you are, telling me about your sister. That does not sound like someone who has successfully eliminated empathy. She looked at him, and for a moment the legendary Silver Death was gone, replaced by someone younger and more uncertain than her reputation suggested. You make me question everything I have been taught. That should anger me. Instead, I find it refreshing. Over the following days, a pattern emerged. Zaravex would attend to her duties, managing the integration of Nexus Prime into Imperial administration with the efficiency everyone expected. She would review tactical reports, coordinate with her officers, project the image of absolute control that the Empire demanded. Then, when the ship's cycle turned to night mode, she would come to Marcus's quarters. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her about Earth, about oceans and forests and cities that grew organically rather than being planned. About music and literature and the human obsession with creating meaning from chaos. She told him about Krell society, about the rigid hierarchies and the weight of expectation, about worlds she had conquered and the faces she still remembered despite her training to forget. Your people have a concept, she said one night, sitting in what had become her usual chair. Loft. It appears constantly in your cultural databases, but I cannot parse its meaning. The Krell word that translates closest means strategic alliance with reproductive intent. That cannot be what your literature describes. Marcus considered how to explain something so fundamental yet so complex. Love is choosing someone fully and completely, knowing all their flaws and complications, and deciding that their presence in your life makes everything else worthwhile. It is seeing someone's darkness and light and accepting both. It is terrifying and beautiful and completely illogical. But what purpose does it serve? What tactical advantage does it provide? None. That is the point. Not everything exists for advantage. Some things exist simply because they make life worth living. Zarvex leaned back, processing this. If I understand correctly, love requires vulnerability. Exposing your weaknesses to another person. That seems dangerous. It is. But so is living without ever being truly known by anyone. That is a different kind of danger, the danger of becoming only what others expect, until you forget who you actually are. She met his eyes, and Marcus saw something shift in her expression. Is that what I have become? So shaped by expectations that nothing of my own self remains? No. I think the person you were meant to be is still there, just buried under layers of protocol and conditioning. The fact that you keep coming here, that you ask these questions, that proves there is more to you than the weapon they tried to create. And if they discover this? If the Empire learns that their perfect commander has been corrupted by human philosophy? Then you will have to decide which matters more, being what they want or becoming who you actually are. The crisis came on the 14th day of the occupation. Marcus was in the ship's observation deck, a vast space that few crew members used, preferring their assigned duties to contemplation. The Krell were efficient, but they were not comfortable with stillness. Zarvex found him there, moving with an urgency he had not seen since their first meeting. Her expression was troubled, the carefully maintained neutrality cracked by genuine concern. We have a situation, she said without preamble. A Valorian trade convoy has entered the sector. They have not acknowledged Imperial authority and are demanding access to Nexus Prime. My orders are clear. Anyone who challenges Imperial sovereignty is to be destroyed. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. How many ships? 7. 3 are passenger vessels. Families. Children. Her voice was steady, but he heard the strain underneath. The Empire does not differentiate between military and civilian targets when authority is challenged. A lesson must be sent. You do not want to do this. What I want is irrelevant. I am a tool of the Empire. I execute their will. No. Marcus stood, facing her directly. You are a person who has been told she is a tool. There is a difference. Those are families, Zarvex. People who probably do not even know the Empire has claimed this sector. Killing them will not serve any purpose except showing how ruthless you can be. It will establish that Imperial authority is absolute. It will establish that the Empire rules through fear and murder. Is that the legacy you want? Do you want to be remembered as the person who murdered children because they did not know to be afraid? Her jaw tightened. You ask me to disobey direct orders. That is treason. The punishment is death. I ask you to be more than what they made you. To choose compassion over protocol. To prove that you are capable of mercy. Mercy is weakness. Mercy is the hardest kind of strength. It is easy to destroy. Creating something better, protecting life instead of taking it, that requires real courage. They stood there, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Marcus could see the conflict in her eyes, centuries of conditioning warring with something newer and more fragile. Finally, Zarvex activated her communication device. This is Commander Zarvex to all ships. Stand down from battle readiness. Open a channel to the Valorian convoy. Her second-in-command's voice crackled through. Commander, our orders. I am aware of our orders, Sub-Commander. I am also aware that destroying civilian vessels serves no strategic purpose. We will inform the Valorians of Imperial authority and offer them safe passage to alternative routes. This sector is secure. We do not need to prove it with blood. There was a pause. As you command. Zarvex closed the channel and turned to Marcus. Her hands were trembling slightly, the first sign of genuine fear he had seen from her. I just committed treason. When the Empire learns of this, they will recall me for reconditioning or execution. Or they will learn that their most effective commander has found a better way. That conquest does not always require carnage. You do not understand. This is not how the Empire works. This is not who I am allowed to be. Marcus took a risk. He reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool, her fingers longer than his, tipped with nails that could serve as weapons. She stared at their joined hands as if witnessing something impossible. Then maybe it is time to discover who you could be instead, he said softly. The following hours were tense. The Valorian convoy was contacted, informed of the new territorial boundaries, and given safe passage to alternate trade routes. They left without incident, confused but grateful. Zarvex's crew executed her orders with precision, though Marcus noticed the subtle glances, the whispered conversations that suggested her decision had not gone unnoticed. That night she came to his quarters earlier than usual, She looked exhausted, the weight of her choice visible in her posture. "I have been thinking," she said, settling into her chair with less grace than usual. "About what you said. About being more than what they made me. And I do not know if it is possible. I have been the silver death for so long. Every decision I make is filtered through decades of training and conditioning. How do I separate who I truly am from what I was designed to be? You start by making small choices. Like sparing those families today. Like coming here each night to talk instead of remaining isolated. Like asking questions instead of just following orders. Each choice builds on the last. It is frightening. Not knowing what comes next. Always before there was the mission, the objective, the clear purpose. Now I question everything." Marcus smiled gently. "Welcome to being genuinely alive. It is terrifying and wonderful. Most people spend their whole lives never questioning, just accepting what they are told. You are brave enough to look deeper." She was quiet for a moment, then spoke with a vulnerability that made his chest ache. "When I look at you, I feel something that has no tactical purpose. Something that makes me want to protect rather than conquer. Something that makes your approval matter more than imperial commendations. I do not have words for it in my language. We call it affection. Or connection. Or, if we are being honest, the beginning of love." "Love." She repeated the word as if tasting it. "That illogical, inefficient, dangerous thing you described. The very same. I think I am experiencing it. I think I have been experiencing it since you walked toward me instead of away in that terminal. I think that is why I invited you aboard. Not for cultural consultation, but because I could not bear the thought of never speaking with you again." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. "Zara Vex. I know this is impossible. I know there is no future where this ends well. Our species are different. Our worlds are different. I am still the Empire's weapon and you are still human. But for these moments, in this space, can we pretend that none of that matters?" He stood and moved to sit beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "It does not have to be pretend. Yes, there are obstacles. Yes, this is complicated. But I stopped caring about that the moment you trusted me enough to tell me about your sister. The moment you chose mercy over protocol. You are not just the Empire's weapon. You are Zara Vex, and that person is remarkable." She turned to face him fully, and he saw tears forming in those metallic eyes. "I do not know how to do this. How to be someone who feels these things. How to be anything other than what I was made to be. Then we figure it out together. One conversation at a time. One choice at a time. You do not have to have all the answers right now. The Empire will not allow this. When they discover what I am becoming, they will see it as corruption. As weakness. Then maybe we find a way to show them it is strength. That a commander who understands mercy and connection is more valuable than one who only knows destruction." Zara Vex reached up and touched his face with one long finger, the gesture infinitely gentle. "You have changed everything, Marcus Chin. You have shown me that there is more to existence than conquest. More to myself than I was allowed to believe. I do not know what happens next, but I know I do not want to face it without you. Then you will not have to." They sat together in the quiet of the quarters, looking out at the stars, two beings from different worlds who had found something neither expected. The galaxy still feared the silver death. But Marcus Chin had seen past the reputation to the person underneath, had offered understanding instead of terror, connection instead of distance. And Zara Vex, for the first time in her carefully controlled life, had allowed herself to feel something beyond duty. She had chosen vulnerability over strength, questions over certainty, and in doing so, had discovered that perhaps the greatest conquest was not of territories or enemies, but of the walls we build around our own hearts. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. Inside, two souls navigated the complicated space between fear and desire, between what was expected and what was possible. It was messy and uncertain and completely illogical. It was, in other words, perfectly human. And perhaps, Zara Vex thought as she sat beside this strange, brave man who had seen her as more than a weapon, that was exactly what she needed to become.